Hi, I'm Linda Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the quietest person in the room holds all the cards. Funny how life works. One day, you're being ordered around by your entitled cousins. The next, you're signing their termination papers. But let's start from the beginning. My Aunt Barbara was always the black sheep of the family. While her siblings pursued traditional careers, doctors, lawyers, accountants, she built a tech empire from scratch. Chen Innovations became a multi-billion-dollar company under her leadership, but you'd never guess it from the way she lived. She wore simple clothes, drove a 10-year-old car, and stayed in the same modest house she bought when she first started the company. I was the only one who really knew her. While my cousins, Marcus and Diana, attended elite private schools and flaunted their family name, I spent my weekends at Aunt Barbara's house, learning to code on her old computer. Business isn't about fancy degrees, Linda, she'd say as I struggled through my first program. It's about seeing what others miss. When I was 12, my parents died in a car accident and Aunt Barbara took me in. Relatives whispered that she did it out of guilt, too busy building her empire to help her struggling brother. But I knew better. She saw something in me that no one else did. For 15 years, I worked alongside her, starting from the bottom. While Marcus and Diana partied through college, I was learning every aspect of Chen Innovations, from customer service to product development. They mockingly called me Aunt Barbara's shadow. But I didn't care. I was learning things no business school could teach. Then came the diagnosis: pancreatic cancer, stage 4. She faced it the same way she faced everything else, practically without drama. Linda, she said one evening in her home office, I need you to promise me something. Anything, I replied, fighting back tears. Don't let them know how smart you are. Not until the right moment. She handed me a sealed envelope. This contains everything you need, but timing is everything. You'll know when. I didn't understand then, but I would soon enough. Aunt Barbara passed away quietly in her sleep 3 months later. Her funeral was filled with tech industry elites, but my cousins managed to make it all about themselves. Marcus gave a tearful speech about his beloved aunt, whom he hadn't visited in years. Diana sobbed dramatically for the cameras, clutching her designer handbag. The real drama started at the will reading. The family gathered at Chen Innovations headquarters, Aunt Barbara's siblings, their spouses, Marcus, Diana, and me. Everyone expected the company to go to Marcus, the eldest male heir, with shares distributed among the family. That was how things were traditionally done. Mr. Patterson, the lawyer, cleared his throat and began reading. The first few minutes were standard, small bequests to longtime employees, charitable donations. Then came the bombshell. And to my niece, Linda Chen, I leave my controlling interest in Chen Innovations, comprising 70% of all voting shares. The remaining 30% will be distributed among current employees according to their years of service. Chaos erupted. This is impossible, Marcus shouted, his face turning red. She's just a junior employee. She doesn't even have an MBA. Diana's mascara streaked as she wailed. We're the rightful heirs. She was just the poor orphan Aunt Barbara took in out of pity. Their father, my Uncle James, rose shakily to his feet. There must be some mistake. Barbara wouldn't leave everything to the help. Diana spat. Mr. Patterson remained unfazed. The will is quite clear, and I assure you, your sister was of sound mind when she made these arrangements. He pulled out another document. Furthermore, Miss Linda Chen has been secretly serving as deputy CEO for the past 2 years. All the paperwork is in order. I sat quietly, remembering Aunt Barbara's words. Timing is everything. This wasn't the moment. Not yet. The family meeting that followed was brutal. They gathered at Uncle James' mansion, the same one he bought years ago with money borrowed from Aunt Barbara. I had been invited, but it was clear what my role was supposed to be. Linda, be a dear and serve the coffee, Helen, Marcus's mother, said with a saccharine smile that didn't reach her eyes. That's what you're good at, right? Serving others? I played along, pouring coffee for everyone as they discussed their options, speaking as if I wasn't even in the room. We need to contest the will, Uncle James declared. Barbara wasn't thinking clearly near the end. Obviously, Marcus sneered, not even glancing at me as I refilled his cup. Look at her. She doesn't have what it takes to run a billion-dollar company. She's not even dressed properly. He had a point about my clothes. I wore a simple blouse and slacks, while they were draped in designer labels. What they didn't know was that I owned the building their favorite designer's flagship store operated in. The board will never accept her, Diana added, checking her reflection in her phone. They need someone with proper education, proper connections. I continued serving coffee, silently watching them plot my downfall. Legal challenges, board member alliances, media strategies. They mapped out everything without once addressing me directly. To them, I was furniture, just as I had been all these years. Finally, Uncle James turned to me. Linda, this can be easy or difficult. Sign over the shares to Marcus, and we'll offer you a generous settlement, enough to live comfortably. It's what's best for everyone. I looked at their expectant faces, the same people who had barely acknowledged me at family gatherings, who had mocked my close relationship with Aunt Barbara, who had whispered behind my back that I was just a cherry case. I'll think about it, I said softly, gathering the empty coffee cups. The board meeting is on Monday. I'll have my answer then. They smiled triumphantly, already celebrating their victory. Marcus even patted my head condescendingly. Good girl. I knew you'd see reason. As I walked out of the mansion, I pulled out my phone and the envelope Aunt Barbara had given me. Inside were documents, passwords, and a letter. The time for hiding is over. Show them who you really are. I smiled as I sent a series of pre-prepared emails. Monday's board meeting would certainly be interesting. After all, while my dear cousins had been busy flaunting their last name, I had spent 15 years becoming the backbone of Chen Innovations. Every major client contract had my name on it. Every successful product launched in the past 5 years had my code in it. Every key employee owed their position to my recommendations. They thought Monday's board meeting would be Diana and Marcus's triumph. They had no idea what was coming. Monday morning dawned bright and clear. I arrived at Chen Innovations headquarters at 6:00 a.m., 2 hours before the meeting. The security guards nodded respectfully. They had known who I really was for years. I had heard Marcus and Diana spent the weekend calling board members, rallying support for their coup. Let them try. I changed into the outfit I had prepared. Not one of the designer suits my cousins favored, but a perfectly tailored black dress Aunt Barbara had given me for my last birthday. Power isn't about looking powerful, she had told me. It's about being powerful. At 7:45, I stood by my office window and watched as Marcus and Diana arrived, looking smug. Uncle James and Aunt Helen trailed behind them, likely for added pressure. They were dressed for a fashion show, not a board meeting. Time to greet the family, I whispered to myself, picking up the stack of folders I had prepared. The boardroom was tense when I walked in. 12 board members sat around the massive table. My family occupied one end. Marcus was already in the CEO's chair, smirking. Linda, Diana called sweetly. Be a dear and get us some coffee before you go. I smiled. Of course. But first, I pressed the intercom. Sarah, please bring in the documents. The door opened and my executive assistant, whom my cousins had always assumed was just Barbara's secretary, walked in, pushing a cart filled with folders. She distributed them personally to each board member. What's this? Marcus demanded, trying to snatch a folder from my hands. Patience, cousin, I said calmly, continuing my round. All will be clear in a moment. Once every board member had a folder, I walked to the head of the table. Marcus was still in the CEO's chair. You're in my seat, I said softly. He laughed. Come on, Linda, we all know. I cut him off, my voice sharp. You are in my seat. Move. Something in my tone made him stand, though he tried to play it off as humor. The board members were flipping through their folders. I saw their expressions change. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I began. Inside those folders, you'll find several things. First, detailed reports of every major decision made at Chen Innovations over the past 5 years. You'll notice my signature on 90% of them. Those decisions you attributed to others, they were actually mine. Marcus tried to interrupt, but I continued. You'll also find documentation of some interesting financial transactions. Marcus, would you like to explain to the board why $2 million of company funds were used to cover your gambling debts last year? His face turned white. That's confidential. I turned to Diana. Perhaps you'd like to explain the fake consulting firm you set up. The one that billed the company for services never rendered. You can't prove, she stammered. Oh, but I can. I smiled. Aunt Barbara and I documented everything. We let it slide, hoping you'd learn. Grow up. Become responsible. We were wrong. Uncle James stood, his face purple with rage. Now see here. Sit down, Uncle, I said quietly. Your section is on page 12. The irregular loans, the misappropriated funds, the shell companies. Would you like me to continue? He collapsed into his chair. I turned back to the board. For years, I worked quietly, learning every aspect of this company. While others took credit, I let them, because Aunt Barbara taught me that true power doesn't need recognition. It needs results. I clicked the remote. The screen behind me lit up with charts. Under my direct management, though others took credit, our R&D department increased productivity by 200%. Our client retention rate rose to 98%. Our profit margins doubled. The board members nodded. Many were finally realizing why certain departments had mysteriously improved over the years. Now, I continued, we have a choice. You can support my cousin's attempted coup, in which case I'll be forced to release all this information to the media and the proper authorities. I clicked another button. New documents appeared on the screen. Or we can move forward with the expansion plans I've spent the last year developing: 5 new tech centers, partnerships with leading research facilities, and a revolutionary product line that will put us years ahead of our competitors. Silence. The board members exchanged glances, doing the math in their heads. Finally, Mr. Rodriguez, our longest-serving board member, spoke. I moved to formally confirm Linda Chen as CEO of Chen Innovations, effective immediately. Seconded came multiple voices. This is ridiculous, Marcus exploded. She's nothing. She's nobody. She's just the poor little orphan that Aunt Barbara. Marcus. I cut him off, my voice ice cold. You're fired. Security is waiting outside to escort you from the building. You can't do this. Diana shrieked. We're family. I looked at her calmly. Was I family when you made me serve coffee? Was I family when you mocked my clothes, my education, my dedication to Aunt Barbara? No, Diana. You made it very clear what you thought of me as family. Security entered. More guards who had known my real position for years. Uncle James, Aunt Helen. I turned to them. You have a choice. Accept my leadership and keep your shares as silent partners, or join your children in unemployment. Decide now. They looked at each other, then at their screaming children being escorted out. They nodded meekly. As the chaos subsided, I addressed the board again. Now shall we discuss those expansion plans? By the end of the day, my position was secure. The expansion was approved. A press release announcing my leadership was already circulating. That evening, I sat in Aunt Barbara's old office, my office now, looking at her picture. You taught me well, I whispered. Power isn't about shouting the loudest or wearing the most expensive clothes. It's about patience, knowledge, and timing. My phone was full of messages from family members suddenly remembering how much they had always loved me. I ignored them all, except one. Maria, my aunt's old housekeeper, had sent a simple text. You did good, Miss Linda. Your aunt would be proud. I smiled, looking out over the city lights. The company would thrive, not because I was born into privilege, but because I had earned every step of my success. Marcus and Diana. Last I heard, they were trying to start their own company. Good luck to them. They'd finally have to learn what real work meant. As for me, I kept Aunt Barbara's lessons close to my heart. Success isn't about being seen as powerful. It's about being powerful. And sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should watch out for. After all, they might just own the room.